welcome to another exciting episode of Let's Talk Comics, the official Image Comics podcast where we go one-on-one with your favorite creators in the business to find out how they got in, why they got in, what they're still doing in comics, and what they've got coming up in comics. Today's episode, if you're a longtime listener, is a little bit different. If you're a new listener, welcome. This is an end of the year show. This is something I wanted to do. Well, I'll be totally honest, it's something I wanted to do because I saw a friend of mine do a bit of a look back on the year with a number of the interviews he did. It was a buddy of mine, Brandon Davis, who hosts a phenomenal show, Phase Zero. You can go check that out. And in that, he was talking about a lot of the takeaways he had from the interviews and stuff he did. And he was just kind of looking back on how some of that stuff was reflective of his own career and things like that. And so, like, normally, you know, when I do this show, I am asking questions and really just trying to, like, stay out of the way, right? Like, obviously, there are, depending on who I'm talking to in this show, we have a lot of fun. If it's someone I've known for a while, then, it feels a little bit different than someone who maybe I'm meeting for the first time. But inevitably, at the end of the day, they're all just fun. They end up being fun conversations. But the goal is, whether you're a reader, a fan, a professional, someone who wants to be a professional, I think each of these episodes has a little something for everyone, which is, not pat myself on the back. Here we go. One of the reasons why I think the show has found the audience that it has. And we've been able to build this community just based off the comments I see on Spotify, the feedback we get on social media, the reviews that are generously left by you folks on Apple Podcasts, which I appreciate. It's one of the best ways to support the show. Is that us doing this is kind of just like, you know, it's me, it's the creator, and then it's you. And we're all sitting in a room and we're having a good time and we're talking about what we love, comics. So today's a little different. I wrote some bullet point notes that I'm going to kind of go off of. Hopefully it's not too rambly. Hopefully it's one you stick with, all the way through. I think there's good stuff. And let me say, so this is not a clip show. I'm not going to be playing clips from other episodes and just kind of going through it. I wrote down some quotes. I wrote down some of my thoughts about some of that stuff. And it was really, really hard to kind of narrow it down to a select few, because trying to pick my favorite episode is hard because they're all uniquely different and good in their own ways. But these are some of the ones that I thought stood out, and I hopefully you enjoy this. So if the episode runs long, that's okay, because you know what? These conversations, they deserve a little bit of time. To start things off, one of the first moments I think in doing the show that really reframed how I thought about success for myself, right? But I think this applies to success in general, came from Marjorie Liu. At some point in our conversation, we were talking about teaching and students, and experience. And so I tossed a question her way that was something along the lines of, what does she learn from her students, right? So she's there, she's a huge career, she's imparting, what she's learned a number of ways, but what does she get back from her students? And she didn't even hesitate on the answer for that one. She basically said everything. She said everything. Because I'm reminded that one can never stop learning. It doesn't matter if you've been doing this for 20 years. I still have a lot more to learn. That never ends. And I think that quote on its own sounds simple and almost maybe obvious in a way. But I think coming from Marjorie, it lands a little bit different because she is someone who people point to as someone who's figured this out, right? And I think she's kind of saying pretty plainly that the idea of like having arrived, it doesn't exist. It's not true. And she followed it up with something along saying, I can't be one kind of writer. I can't stay in one place. I'm like a shark, always swimming. And that part, I'm like a shark, I'm always swimming, like almost became one of my mantras for the year, because I think that is one of the few, sometimes many common threads that you get from any episode of this show, especially for someone who is figuring out what success looks like in comics. I want to get a little deeper and say this is advice that I think you could take even beyond that. But the more I thought about that line, the more I realized how many creators shared that same instinct, even if they described it differently, right? The ones who last aren't chasing comfort. They're chasing motion. And I think once you start thinking about motion, you also start thinking about risk. And with risk, you then have to think about what it costs to keep moving forward creatively. And there was no better conversation, I think, that illustrated that point than the one I had with Will Maxwell Prince and Dennis Camp. Because if Marjorie's insight was about never settling, then my convo with these two was more what inevitably turned into, what happens when you don't. Because I think movement and momentum is not just about changing projects. It's, I think it's also deciding how much of yourself you're willing to put into the work. If you know Will's work and you know Dennis's work, Will obviously works on Ice Cream Man. Dennis works on a number of things, including this year's big hit. It's on every list, Assorted Crisis Events. You know that these two guys, there is a sense of vulnerability in their stories that really permeates through, that makes what they do resonate with so much. And so the episode we did the episode because Will had done a issue of Ice Cream Man, that the Mortal Coil, which was told not through pages of a comic, but through cards in a playing deck. And so, so we were ended up talking about that, but in talking about some of the themes of those books, Dennis said something that, was just like, oh my gosh. In talking about vulnerability, Dennis comes kind of right out. He doesn't dress it up in any way. In that, during his process, there's a vulnerability and an honesty that frightens even him sometimes. And it's not because it's like he's not hiding from bravery, right? But it's the exposure in vulnerability, and that exposure is risk. And so in doing that, we then get then Will kind of jumps in and talks about kind of the reader relationship and why that's important, not only to him, but obviously, to Dennis's work as well. And he said something, the quote is, what is this thing that you're passing on to a person who spends time with you? They pay money, they work hard for, so what are you giving them? And I think that question that Will poses really kind of cuts through because it asks whether you respect the reader enough to give them something real. And it's no secret that I feel like some of the best stories are the ones that feel the most real. It doesn't matter what the setting is. It could be big superhero stuff, it could be fantasy, it could be horror, it could be crime noir, whatever. The best ones feel the most real. And they feel the most real where, because I think, the very common writing bit of advice is write what you know, write to your strengths and kind of start there. And, in that conversation, you really get to see two friends who love comics really connect. Their friendship, there's even an anecdote about some shared trauma that they experienced, which you're just going to have to listen to the episode to find out what that was. But also I think, the way people carry each other through hard moments, hearing how the two of them had each other's back in the early parts of their careers, all of that kind of, like vulnerability in a sense is what, like, you don't get work like that resonates so deeply from people who are just protecting themselves in their work. You get it from people who are willing to risk something. And I think I think those two guys are perfect examples of putting it all out there and more often than not being able to reap the rewards there. But that said, right, like not all risks, I think, look the same. Some risks are emotional. Some of them are structural. And sometimes it's just following your gut, right? And trusting that, like, whatever your path to whatever you're trying to get to, it doesn't have to look like everyone else's. And that brings me to the conversation I had with Sanford Greene. Sanford and his crew had a new arc of Bitter Root that came out. A lot of folks were super excited about it. It was great. And I've known Sanford for a while, but I think, he has a little bit of a backstory. Okay. One of the things that I start every episode with is if there was an Earth 2 or an alternate timeline where said creator was an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer or a carpenter or a plumber or whatever, right? Like could that have ever been something? For Sanford, I think he talked about some of his early fandom in a way that, like, Sanford thought he was going to go into animation, right? But his early days of going to Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, helped him realize how many different professions or worlds kind of orbit comics, right? Animation, games, design, style. And so there were a number of different ways that Sanford kind of reminisces on how he could inevitably end up to where he did, which is in comics. Every single one of these episodes illustrates that there is no straight path. There is no, you just get into it and do it. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. For some, like, they were super, super motivated to do it, but no one just started and did it. And I think if you are someone who listens to this show for advice, and something like that, that is I think that's a really key piece, because so many people feel like they're failing if they don't know exactly where they're headed. In Sanford's story is a reminder that career, the idea of the corporate ladder or the career ladder or whatever, that's not always how it happens. Sometimes they're careers are more like webs than anything else, where you can travel from one part to another, but it all inevitably is this one thing. Sideways movement still builds momentum. Skills stack. Even for me, I started my whole working career, I started working at Build-A-Bear Workshop. It was my first job out of college, and I was 16. My mom said, "You're not getting an allowance anymore. Go do this thing." And at first I was like, "Oh my God, is this what I'm doing?" And then that turned into, and then I started doing their birthday parties. And then I was able to work at their store in Fifth Avenue in New York City. And I got to meet a ton of celebrities, and I got to be in the Thanksgiving Day parade, a bunch of really cool stuff. And then that, inevitably got me, that didn't get me my job at Marvel, but I inevitably started at Marvel because I had just finished college, and I wanted to, I had a PR degree and I wanted to do something with it, and I liked comics, and I liked, I had a bunch of Marvel stuff growing up. So that's how I got there. And then from Marvel, I jumped into the world of running a website. I started comicbook.com, which was one of the wildest 10 years of my life, till inevitably a few conversations with publisher Eric Stevenson and Image Comics partner Robert Kirkman reminded me where my true passion was, and that was comics. And now here I am at Image, doing a ton of cool things and working with a ton of cool creators, and being able to do this podcast as a part of it. But if you would have told 16-year-old me or even 18-year-old me that if I had decided to pick one thing and get to it, and I would end up here, there's no way. There's no way. And again, right? So that's my own personal little anecdote to the countless of stories that we've heard over the last year. And so to sum that up, is I think once you accept that there's no single right path, you start thinking differently about how things can end, about when to stop pushing one thing and start trusting another. There is a Earth 2 where Jim went on to be a store manager at Build-A-Bear, then maybe a territory manager or whatever. It wasn't. But again, right? It's knowing when to stop pushing one thing, start trusting another, which the next person I'm about to talk about is the epitome of. Mr. Robert Kirkman. Robert, I think, challenged one of the most romantic ideas in comics at times, which can be perseverance at all costs. You want to be able to tell your story. You want to tell your story for as long as you can. And sometimes it just doesn't work, or it's not working. It's not that it doesn't work. Maybe it stops working. Maybe it did work and it stops working. And so when I asked Robert what kind of advice he'd give to some creators, he said, end your books. If it ain't working, pivot. And I think at times that can sound easier said than done, mainly because of the economics of how the business works. But if you sit with that a little bit more, I think what Robert is really talking about is listening, right? Listening to readers, listening to retailers, listening to the market and momentum, and really more importantly, listening to yourself. Robert talked about, he has got a bunch of projects that didn't catch, and he didn't frame any of them really as failure. Those were all necessary steps. Robert talks a lot about some of the things he did, one, to not only get a book in front of someone to hopefully get it greenlit, but also his Invincible story is, I think, one of the most famous things that he tells that has the most like, oh shit kind of moments where he had to move up a big death because Jim Valentino told him the book's not going to exist if you wait that long. And later in the conversation, in relation to projects that ended, and he didn't necessarily get to maybe take as long as he wanted, Robert has, obviously he's a partner at Image Comics, and all of the conversations we have are about creator-owned books. There's no bigger champion for creator-owned books than the founders and the partners, Robert Kirkman, Eric Stevenson, and again, right, founders, Todd, Jim, Rob, Mark, Eric. You can always go back to those books if you own them, right? So like, if you're telling a story with someone else's characters and it's not working or it gets canceled or whatever, like chances are you may not get a second shot on that one once you maybe figure out some other things about your style and what connects with readers or whatever. But if it's a book you own, well, if you want to start an old project back up with what you've learned and can do it, you could, because you own it. And I think understanding that risk feels different. It's, I think betting on yourself feels less reckless and more intentional. There's nobody that embodies that belief more loudly than Robert Liefeld. Rob Liefeld. Rob Liefeld is... I have to give that guy a lot of credit. I know Rob is a big part of the reason of why I am where I am today. When I did this show the first time around, Rob took a chance on a recommendation to come do my show. And in doing that, I think set a lot of other things in motion. And if my train was going down a track, there was about to be a divergence, and then my conversation with Rob happens, and I end up taking the left track instead of the right track, and that left track got me to here. But anyway, look, you don't talk to someone like Rob for subtlety, and that's kind of the point. At one moment, we are, when we were talking about creators thinking about doing their own work, and he said, if you've ever thought, what if I did my own thing? You should just do it. You should do that right now. And then later went to go on and reiterate why Image Comics has the best creator-owned deal in the business. What matters about those quotes isn't, an agreement of them. It's the clarity of it. Comics don't move forward because everybody agrees. They move forward because somebody believes something loud enough to act on it. Now look, belief doesn't guarantee success, right? But hesitation guarantees being stagnant, right? And that belief didn't just shape individual careers. It helped create an environment where risk was possible at scale. I've been very fortunate this year to talk to Image founders, partners, etc. All professionals who I've admired for a very, very long time. And Marc Silvestri was one of those bucket list ones for me. And it's crazy. I mention this a lot because I inevitably ended up talking to a lot of folks who were inspired and or influenced or worked in one capacity for Marc Silvestri at Top Cow. And so to be able to talk to a creator who had that kind of impact, who was part of not only the image revolution, but had the kind of impact with his own, I mean, don't get me wrong, like Rob Liefeld with Extreme Studios and, Mark with Top Cow and what Robert has now with Skybound, both Rob and Marc were added new players to the draft, right? And so in talking to Marc, like Marc's a great example of kind of legacy and kind of like what that maybe looks like after you've done all the risk taking that you're going to do. He basically he said if he and the other founders knew what they were doing, Image would never have happened. And it so perfectly captures how the most meaningful things actually start. Because they don't start with certainty. They start with momentum. If it wasn't Todd going around and getting everyone on board and saying, let's do this, screw this, we're taking our toys and we're taking our talents and we're going to go do something else. But the thing about that and starting Image that made Marc the most proud is that those founders made it safe to do their own stuff. They didn't make it easy. Success was not guaranteed, but it was safe. The Image deal today is the same deal the founders had amongst one another in 92 and has been the same deal for 30 years. 30 plus years. So in doing what they did, they made it safe to try. They made it safe to fail. They made it safe to take your own risk in making your own work and owning it. And I think that distinction matters because some of the most meaningful things in comics weren't built by people trying to preserve the status quo. They were built by creators and artists and folks behind the scenes willing to risk embarrassment and chaos and uncertainty. But that foundation, right? In everything that we've kind of talked about so far in this episode, I don't even know how long it's going, but we're still going. That foundation is exactly why I'm so optimistic about what comes next. I do want to shout out a few other conversations before I kind of wrap this up that I think you should go check out. I think you should go check out Tyler Kirkham's interview. I think you should check out Aubrey Sitterson's. I think you should 100% check out Jordy Belair's, James Tynan, Michael Walsh. Like, I was blessed for all of the folks I got to talk to this year, and the roster and the folks I've targeted for next year. Next year, someone I've been excited to talk to, Tony Fleeks. We're gonna hear from him next year. Like I said, those are just some of the other ones. All of them say really, really great things, but I think for the purpose of me trying to, I don't know, thread the needle, those are the ones I picked. And I had to pick some of the ones that I was the most proud of, only because that they were more bucket list items for me than anything else. But all that to say, as much as this episode has been about looking back, we have to end this special year-end, got it right under the deadline, end of the year episode by looking forward. Because I genuinely believe 2026 is going to be a killer year for creator-owned comics. And I'm not just saying that because I work for Image, right? I think if you take a look at how the marketplace is shifting and at how the marketplace has changed, look, I've seen a lot of businesses. Comics is a business that changes what feels like almost daily. But if you pay attention to it, and by pay attention, I mean, like, there's a number of ways you can pay attention. You pay attention just by participating, right? If you're reading books, you'll notice a change or a feel in some of the books. You notice if you are going to websites and getting news about stuff that's happening within our industry. You participate in the business by creating your own content. This year was the year of the comic book influencer, and God bless every single one of you, because the way we get the word out about books, the way we get excited about books is changing. And I believe 100% that a large chunk of that change happened because, younger folks are coming into, I don't mean like, you little kids. I just mean this business only survives if there are consistently new people coming to the medium. And that's not to say anything that came before it was bad or wrong or different. It only survives if we grow the audience. I forget where my tangent on that was going, but I'm participating in comics. It was a big year for the big two books. There's no denying something like The Absolute Line, right? But what I think you're going to start to see, and why creator-owned books are so important, is because creator-owned books represent choice. When someone picks a book up that carries the image eye, they're not following a brand. They're following a voice. And that's what's so exciting right now is, and it's one of those things where there are visible moments in the market. Let me back that up. I think the thing that I like about it is, with all the big things happening in comics right now, comics are more as visible as they've been. And creator-owned books create entry points. Not just because they're a new number one, but because they're new. They are stories that take you on a ride in the same way that some of your favorite other corporate books maybe do. And so when something like Absolute Batman hits, and I know we're talking about other companies' books here, but I think you cannot talk about the year without talking about that book. Scott Snyder, plenty of great creator-owned stuff here at Image. Go check out Undiscovered Country. Go check out Witches. He's actively at work on that show with him and Jock. Scott is a huge champion for creator-owned stuff. But when something like Absolute Batman hits, and you're a creator in the business, or you're a fan in some sort, of some sort, like, don't take that success as a threat. It really should be more seen as an invitation, because that's what's bringing new fans in, right? They're coming in for something familiar. And then when they look around, they get curious, right? That moment is everything. Because I think when a new reader realizes that comics aren't just one universe or tone, that's when creator-owned books stop feeling risky and start feeling more exciting. And right now, curiosity's back, baby. So when I look ahead to the next year, I don't just see more books. I see more voices, more chances for readers to find their book. So if you're already reading creator-owned books, keep on talking about them. If you're new, welcome to the party. If you're a creator thinking about taking a swing, there's room for you. Plenty of room. 2026 is going to be here before you know it. It's going to be here tomorrow if you're listening to this when I release this on New Year's Eve. And I truly can't wait to see what people make next. So before I go, I put out a call for questions. I wanted to answer some questions. I think you'll start to see us do a little bit more of this as we go into 2026. I know I'm going to definitely try and go live more. with so many fresh faces coming in, I want to demystify the whole process, and I want to make sure that if someone, I love pairing people up with a book that they maybe don't realize may be their new favorite book. But anyway, I told folks I would answer some questions. I have some questions, so just bear with me. I got to pull some of them up. And I think at the same time too, right? Like a lot of folks have wanted to learn a little bit more about me, and this is not about me. Like don't get me wrong. I've had a phenomenal time. I love doing what I'm doing. But you've been with me this whole year. We're basically friends at this point. So let's get into it. So Tie-Dye Comics, this was the year of crossovers. Any Image crossover ideas you'd like to see? You know what? I actually love, not necessarily a story crossover. Actually, no, there was one. It happened in Rogue Sun and Medieval Spawn. Awesome. Ryan Parrott got to have the time of his life, doing a really cool story that fit the tone. It fit right in, didn't really feel out of place. But the thing that I love that has happened over the last couple of months are, Image has done this a bunch. They've done it before. They did it with Spawn before, but I love it when you get to see other big Image properties get to kind of mesh it up with some others, right? So we did Youngblood Team Up Month. There's another Team Up Month that is coming that's going to be fun. I think you'll start to see some more of those as well. And so I like the idea of team up in that way. But also, too, I'm really excited to see, if you're not reading those Ghost Machine books, Geiger, Rook, Redcoat, Geiger and Redcoat are the ones that share the same universe. But I'm excited to see those worlds come together more. That team's got big plans, and the books crossing over is no secret. It's kind of happened a little bit already with some characters. There's a lot of fun to be had there, and that's I think that answers the question. Jordan Thompson asks, what is the most unique writer and artist combo that was released in 2025? That's a hard one to answer, and I'm not trying to not get out of answering that question. But I always find it interesting to see when two creators come together, what kind of music they can make. There's a reason Assorted Crisis Events showed up on a bunch of lists this year. I think the partnership of Deniz and Eric and the rest of that creative team go to show what really can be done in comics, especially when, not that they try and break comics, but they definitely want to push what you think about comics when telling this book. And so I think, to me, that was something really exciting. I'd be reticent not to talk about the continued music that James Tynion and Martin Simmons continue to do on Department of Truth. This year we got Robert Kirkman and David Finch, two of the biggest names in the business, doing Skinbreaker. And so it's less that I am, what do I think was unique? I just love seeing what two people bring to the table and watch that jazz basically play out right in front of us. So I know it kind of feels like a cop-out answer, but it's not so much of a cop-out answer, but sort of. Let's see. What else do we got? I got a lot of questions. I should probably answer this here. I got a lot of questions about, well, how do I get my book published at Image? That all falls under the purview of one Mr. Eric Stevenson, someone who I admire a ton and has, and he's going to hate me for saying this, but I don't think that guy gets enough kind of praise for what he's been able to do in shepherding Image through a lot of very weird times in the industry and to great success. But Eric, he publishes the most diverse line of books in the industry. There's no house style. an Image. But the way to get a book considered, you just go to imagecomics.com/submissions, follow the submission guidelines, and hopefully we see your books on stands coming up. But if you want to know how to do it, that's the way to do it. All the rules and stuff are there, but also too, like, if you don't get an answer or whatever, don't let that stop you. Keep doing the work. And the other maybe bit of advice I'd give that I think is worth kind of mentioning out or mentioning in general is, look, writers, artists, etc. There's a ton on your guys' plate already. And so to be able to say like, well, you should be participating on social media more, doing this, I think instead of just saying participate on social media more, I think if there was a way for you to potentially be a little bit more intentional, I think Kyle Higgins does a great job at this with the Massiveverse stuff and creating short little clips for each issue of all of those books, Radiant, Black, etc. In the same way that I kind of, in my kind of closing of the episode talked about voice and readers coming to unique voices. Readers now, with how social media is working today, I think are buying more for the person than they are necessarily for whatever the book is. I mean, sorry, that's not necessarily true. But I think a reader is more apt to pick something up if they know a little bit more about you. Now, that's not saying you have to, tell everyone every little bit of like what you had for lunch. But I think giving tiny peeks behind the curtain on how the process comes together really helps to build your audience. Scotty Young has done a phenomenal job at this. He's been doing YouTube videos and shorts and things like that. Rob Liefeld's, again, done a ton of that guy. Like, he's been in the business forever. and is still kind of catching up with stuff like that. Those are all people I would look to as far as some of the things that they are doing to help get the word out about their book. And not to mention, like, there's a lot of PR and marketing and stuff, but Kat Salazar, Dan Coyle, those guys are truly doing phenomenal work for all the creators here at Image. There's a lot to do, and no one does more in service of creators working in Image than those and everyone else here, right? Countless hours being put in by our production team and things like that. So anyway, big shout out for Team Image, and a little bit of advice kind of here or there. Archer Abergle shot a question over saying, what is the best work of Robert Kirkman this year? That's a hard question to answer a little bit. I'm gonna also try and wiggle my way out of this one. No. I think his most underrated book is probably Void Rivals. Skinbreaker is phenomenal. Battle Beast was a ton of fun, but Void Rivals is probably the sleeper hit for me. And it's probably more because I was a huge Oblivion Song fan, and I love Lorenzo de Felici's art. If you want like that, like, look, if anything, go check out that book. If you didn't read Oblivion Song when it was coming out, go check that one out. But then also, check out Void Rivals, check out all the other books that Robert's doing. Let's see what else we get. This one's from Daniel Brooks. What was your first steps for getting into comics journalism? Truth be told, I fell into it. No. When I moved to Nashville, I was afforded an opportunity to relaunch the perfect domain name in all of comics, comicbook.com. And I got that opportunity because one of my co-founders, Joe Blackman, was on my press list when I was at Marvel, and he happened to say, like, "Hey, I noticed you moved to Nashville. We're looking at. I've got a team here that's looking to do this thing. Would you be interested in doing it?" And at that point, I had been out of comics for a little bit. I was doing Let's Talk Comics, but I was working at Ingram, and I saw this as an opportunity to get back to something that I loved. And the whole point of comicbook.com was to kind of marry two audiences. You either had comic book sites or you had movie sites, and there wasn't really anything in between. And so what I wanted to do first was build a site that was almost new reader friendly, right? Avengers had just come out, and everyone was asking about Thanos. And so our mantra was, for the diehard fans, we're going to tell everyone why we're super excited about Thanos and the many different directions that we think it can go in. For someone who just only watches MCU movies or whatever, here's everything you need to know. So when your friends talk about Thanos, you can school them with comic knowledge. And that was the genesis. That was the seed of what comic book was. And obviously the movie stuff started to take off, and that was paying a lot of bills. And we did a lot of articles on the movie stuff, but it was all of that and some of the other stuff, the video games and whatever that we covered, allowed me to be able to pay for a lot of the comic book coverage and stuff that we did. We constantly did comic book interviews with comic book creators. We were IGN used to do reviews of every single comic book that was on sale from the major publishers on a Wednesday. They stopped. I said, no. That is probably one of the most read things that I was reading as a fan and a new reader. And so we took that on. And so I tried, so I think I get a lot of grief over certain decisions that I made at comic book, but inevitably at the end of the day, it was because I needed that to make sure that there was still a space for comic book coverage, for fans new and old. So that is I think the shortest TLDR I can on that one. Let's see, what else do I got? Arun Singh jumps in. Arun Singh, for those of you who don't know, works at Skybound, worked at a number of different publishers. Dear friend of mine says, "Is it true that Arun Singh was your boss? Oh my God, what an honor." I talked a lot about people who I owe a great deal of gratitude to. Arun Singh is 100% someone on that list. Definitely top 3. Without Arun and him and I talking about wrestling and then inevitably hockey during my intern interview at Marvel, I don't get in. Like I'm not there. I don't spend 8 years at Marvel. Coming back to Image with him at Skybound is so gratifying for me because it means I get to work with my best friend again. And there's so much that we do behind the scenes, throwing ideas off one another, that a lot of what you see on social or whatever can be Arun coded in a certain way because it probably came out of a conversation he and I had about something. I hate that I'm spending this much time saying so many nice things about him, but I got to give flowers where flowers are due, and they're definitely due to one Mr. Arun Singh. J. Clue B76 says, "Have you read Free Planet yet, and why is it your favorite Image release this year?" This has to be Aubrey Sitterson's burner account. I feel no, I'm just kidding. Free Planet was another great release this year. What Aubrey and Jed are doing in that book is different. It's a meaty book. It's a dense book. It's a book that you can only do in comics. There's so much depth to it that I'm glad to see it show up on a bunch of lists this year. It showed up on comicbook.com's list. I had no influence in that. So check out Free Planet if you have not. I got a note in from Link's Punk Kitten asking why aren't many young people in the scene nowadays, and I think I challenged that notion a little bit in what I was talking about earlier. I think comics ebbs and flows a little bit. And I think I was talking to a retailer the other day and they said something along the lines of like, it finally feels like the audience we were promised for all the kids who were getting into comics and graphic novels via Dogman are starting to arrive. I follow a lot of artists and writers on Instagram. And I think we're close to seeing a new kind of resurgence of not only just younger creators, but again, right, younger readers and things like that. And I think they're here already, but I think you're going to start to see more as the next couple of years go on. There's fresh faces coming into the business, coming into the market and into the business. That's why 2026 is going to be a great year. That's why I have such a positive outlook on what our business. We are a business. Comics is a business that loves to theorize its own death, and I have pushed back on that every single time. Last one comes in from Spanish 2721. Can I have some comics? No. Or recommendations. Recommendations is an easy one. All of them. Look, I talked about a lot of books this episode. I have to shout out Escape by Rick Remender and Daniel Cunha. I have to shout out The Power Fantasy by Kieran Gillen and Casper Wingard. If you want a WTF moment at the end of every comic that plays in the superhero space, read The Power Fantasy. That should be the most talked about book on stands. There's a ton that goes on in that book and it's just gorgeous. Exquisite Corpses, right? If you like Fortnite and The Purge, this is the book for you. You like almost eccentric. No, they are definitely eccentric. Serial killers doing a battle royale in a small town funded by rich people. Who writes a better pitch line than that, right? So Exquisite Corpse is a great one. The Return of Youngblood, The Blood is Back, baby, I think brings another, a totally different, that's a totally different kind of comic book than everything else. And it's not a class. I mean, it is a classic because it's a classic title, but like what Rob's doing, to me, Rob's doing some of the best work of his career on that. I mentioned another. You want a recommendation? Kaya. Pick that book up. So good. Wes Craig has been doing phenomenal stuff for years on that book, and it is just so good. Scotty Young's I Hate Fairyland is coming up on a milestone issue. His new artist Derek Laufman on that is doing phenomenal stuff. I know, here's the problem. I'm inevitably not going to name a book, and I hope if you're a creator who listens to this religiously and doing books for us, please don't take it personally. We'll do a show, I promise, in the next year. I mentioned Tony Fleek's Jerry Duggan, Falling in Love on the Path to Hell was a really fun book this year. I'm looking around. I meant, the Ghost Machine stuff. Rook is of the Ghost Machine books, that one's probably my favorite, but I love all of them. Oh God, Lucky Devils. We got Ryan Brown and Charles Soule together, again, doing a book. If you love 8 Billion Genies, and curse words, Lucky Devils is a book that is, 100% right up your alley. I mentioned the Radiant Black stuff. I can't not mention that. There's just so much. I think, look, if you want actual recommendations, real recommendations from someone who's not a shill working at the company, go to the comic book subreddit. Go to League of Comic Geeks. There's a phenomenal community there. They'll get you some good recommendations for sure. All right, I've gone on long enough. Thank you for all the support this year. Thank you for supporting creator-owned books. Thank you for championing creator-owned books. I think 2026 is going to be a fun one. We're going to do a lot more on this show. This, including probably video. I'm going to put this up on video, and if you have made it staring at me for, how long has this been now? Almost an hour? Thanks. I don't know if I'm looking here, there, where, or wherever. Thank you. We're going to do more of that. What did I say? Well, I want to do more live stuff. If you see me at a convention, please come say hello. Truly humbled by the feedback and support that you guys have given the show over the last couple of years. I was worried about bringing it back. It's one of those things where can you go home again kind of thing. Thank you to Rick Remender for being my second first guest again. I'm going to try and dig up some of the old episodes, some of the archives from the first run. If you want to get like a fresher perspective on some of your now favorite comic book creators, we'll toss those into the feed. We're going to talk to more retailers this year. We're going to talk to more content creators this year. We're going to talk to like just a bunch of other folks in between all of the big projects and things that we've got. This is going to be a year to follow some comic. Oh, you want to hear one more recommendation? Dork by Brett Bean. Brett Bean. That's going to be a fun book. Go tell your retailer you need at least 2 copies on your pull list. All right. Okay, that is enough. Thank you. Thank you for reading comics, because as long as you keep reading comics, I get to keep talking about them. We'll catch you next year.